And we're gonna go live. In 1, 2, now.
Good morning, daily huddlers. I'm thinking back to last week, and Kathryn talked about her challenges with getting her house clean. And you know what? I've had a similar challenge. My broom didn't even show up for work. Do you know why? He overswept.
Lies.
Oh, overswept.
Oh my gosh. Overswept. I don't think I've ever overswept, I have to say.
I can assure you I've overswept. Wow. We have our video streaming from the parking lot of a Whole Foods. I'm impressed around. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Wednesdays on the Daily Huddle, where we talk all things communication and relationships, because we know that more effective communication makes better relationships, and better relationships make better families, better partners, better communities, and better business. I am so excited about today's question. It is really something new and juicy. And the question is, what's your attachment style? So brand new topic with a lot of really great layers of information. But before we dig into that, I have some questions to get us all present together. And I think I'll start with Chase this morning. How are you, Chase? Tell us, how are you and who will you hug today?
I am hopeful, curious, and full of openness. And I will hug, I think I'm going to hug a stranger today. I'm going to figure out how to do that.
Ooh, game on. I will accept that as a challenge and try to do the same. I love it. Good morning, Andrea. So happy to see you. Tell us, where are you and what are you grateful for?
Tara, it's great to see you all. And I am right here, the only place that I can be with you guys in the present moment. And I am grateful for, I've been in the theme of studying. So I'm grateful for our brains and our souls and our spirits when we want to learn. That's what I'm grateful for.
I love that. I love that. Thank you. I have one last question. I'm going to make Sorrel come off mute from the Whole Foods and tell us, what time is it, Sorrel?
Even there, I am here and the time is now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here. And now it is my honor to turn it over to my esteemed colleague, treasured friend, and beautiful co-host, Kathryn Sabol. Kathryn, our question today is, what's your attachment style? And you have us all so curious.
Yeah, this is such a good topic. Thanks, Tara. When I was growing up, I had a best friend. Her name was Shirley. And we were best friends through high school and college and beyond. And it was just such a special friendship for me. And after college, she was like one of those who was really comfortable in her own skin, had a, typical upbringing. She was confident, but not overly so. And as we grew older and went through college and beyond, she kept getting more comfortable in her own skin and more confident, but not overly so. And I came from, a rocky emotional background, and so didn't have the same comfort in my own skin. So as we got older, she got more comfortable, I got less comfortable. I got more anxious, had more self-doubt, et cetera. So what would happen is that we would go weeks without talking to one another. And I would make up stories. Like, I guess we're not as good of friends as I thought. Or she would, go out with other friends and not invite me. No malintent, may have just been a different group of friends. And I'd be like, oh, great, I got left out. She would call me up and just be like normal. And I'd be like, I can't believe we're not even talking about what happened. Because in my mind, something had happened. But to her, it was normal. And to be quite honest, to a third party impartial, it probably was very normal. But I had what's called and was identifying with an anxious attachment style.
Okay.
So our question today is, what's your attachment style? And there's something called attachment theory, which talks about how we're wired for connection as humans. And yet this can really be developed in us in different ways in our younger years, as we are being influenced by our caregivers, our environment. Is it stressful? Is it calm? Are we connecting? Are we engaging? And so last week we talked about the book Platonic. It was written by Marissa Franco, and got all the stickies. And in it, she talks about three particular attachment styles: secure attachment, anxious attachment, and avoidant attachment. And I'm going to read you I don't want to spend too much time reading these things, but it's important to know what we're talking about. So I'm just going to read a couple of things so we can all get on the same level playing field. So secure attachment, secure people assume they are worthy of love and others can be trusted to give it to them. Sounds wonderful, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
If only I knew what that was like. Anxious attachment. People who are anxiously attached assume others will abandon them. So to keep from being abandoned, they act clingy, overly self-sacrificing to accommodate others, or they plunge into intimacy too rapidly. Then the avoidant attachment. Avoidantly attached people are similarly afraid that people will abandon them, but instead of clinging to avoid the outcome, they keep others at a distance. Intimacy signals to them that they could be hurt, so they push others away. So it's important to know, first and foremost, that I see this, I'm not sure if this is true to the professionals and the psychologists, but this is sort of a continuum. We're not one thing all the time. And how we identify with people could have to do with our past history. It could have to do with what that person triggers in us. It could have to do with the relationship that we currently have. And it seems as if we identify with one of these more often than not. So just a couple more things, and then we're going to dive into what this means for us and what we can do about it. Secure people who are identifying with a secure attachment are comfortable asking for support. Anxiously attached people, friends know all sides of them. They overshare. Avoidantly attached people, friends know only their positive side or their strong side. They do not share their vulnerability. Securely attached people are comfortable initiating new friendships. Anxious attachment, fear of rejection impedes initiation of new friendships. And avoidantly attached folks are uninterested in new friendships. And one last one, if you're securely attached, you're more likely to have direct communication, clear direct communication with another person. Anxiously attached, you might tend to be more hostile or passive aggressive in your communication style. And avoidant attachment lacks communication and tends to ghost people, especially when things get tough. So my challenge today was whittling this down so that we could talk about it in our short 30-minute session, because there's so much here. But I'm curious, Tara, got a couple of things to dive into, but wow, there she goes. Yeah, we don't come on here not to be vulnerable. Before I ask you this, I want to say one more thing in full transparency. My relationship with Shirley, my best friend, fell apart over time. There are lots of reasons for that, but I'd say probably the primary one was this, that I kept making up stories about what was happening in our relationship that actually wasn't based in reality and wasn't true on her side. I was passive aggressive and hostile at times, and I didn't have open, direct communication. And it is one of my largest regrets in life that I let that go. And I've tried to rekindle it at times, and it's just never taken. And so I wanted to say that in a moment of vulnerability and what this can do to us or for us in terms of our relationships. You know, it can really make them or break them, even the good ones. So with that said, Tara, I'm curious, after hearing all of that, I want to hear from you, like, what do you identify with? What does this say to you? What's coming up for you?
the number one thing, Kathryn, that is coming up for me is that you shared that we're not just one way all the time with all people, because I think that for me personally, I reflect all of these at times. Probably bounce more between secure and anxious than I do an avoidant. It's the vulnerable conversation we're having right here. But I'll tell you what is really flooding through my brain, not just about myself, but my children and all people that I care about and get to know, is we're not born being anxious or avoidant, right? Based on life experiences, right? And so I like to think back as to when I'm responding, maybe oversharing or feeling fearful. I like to ask myself where it came from. And I actually, this popped up in my brain this morning, and it is pretty vulnerable, but I'm going to share it anyway, because I've reflected on this and shared it many times over the years. So some of you know, and some of you don't know, that my first husband is my very good friend, and he now has a husband, and he's gay. And my now husband, we've been married over 6 years. We've been together over 14 years. But I will tell you, for the first 5 or 6 years of our relationship, there was a continuing theme of my saying to him, and this is hard to even let off my lips today. I would say, thank you for not pushing me away. And he was always like, where is that coming from? Why would I push you away? And I know where it came from, because due to my past marriage, I felt pushed away for years. But here's the tricky piece. Just because we know where our scars come from does not wipe them away. And that's what he and I really discovered together. I now know why that my first husband was struggling internally for years, wanting to love the way he was made to love. And that was not to love me intimately. And I know it so clearly. We have a beautiful friendship. And still, for years, that affected me. And I know that it still does.
Yeah.
So
I think what you're saying is so powerful, because part of me wants to go straight to solution and, okay, guys, okay, great. You here they are. What do we do now? Like, how do we fix it? And, I want to be in it for a moment and then say that, like, awareness is half the battle. My mom told me that growing up all the time. And it is so true. If you don't have awareness, you can't do anything about it. So being aware of these things is helpful in half the battle, so to speak. And it doesn't make them go away. It doesn't mean that, oh, I identified, I'm anxiously attached, guess I won't do that again.
Yeah, it'd be nice if it was that easy. We could read a few books and just be on our merry way.
Yeah, exactly. No. And then it becomes a little bit more painful at first, because you're like, darn it, I'm doing that thing again. But the weird thing is, see, a lot of this is, and this is where you come in, like, a lot of this is nervous system based. It goes against every grain. If I feel like I'm having one of those moments and I want to be passive aggressive, but intellectually, I know that's not the result I want. I don't want to do that. It feels like going against every grain in my body to shift that and do something different. It's like, and I think we're set up for survival in that way. This is what we know. This is where our nervous system goes. We must do this thing. But intellectually, I'm looking at it going, no, I should be direct and own some of the responsibility here instead of be passive aggressive and, blaming. And like, how do we undo that, Tara? How do we, when our nervous system, our body is saying, do that old behavior, stay in that old pattern, but we know we want to do something different. Like, how do we overcome that?
Well, if I had a magic answer for that, I'd probably be somewhere on a beach and an island in
Let's say
Greece.
you wouldn't be here.
No, I actually would still be here with you all, but I would be in Greece. But anyway, back to the question. I can only share based on what I've studied and my practices. And for years, I think that I was a reactor in life. Like, whatever the case was, if it was a relationship conflict, I would just react. I could send off some emails, maybe, or I could show up, leading with my emotions. And I have, through practice, because it takes practice, I always stop and take a breath and try to really think and analyze before I react in such a way. I have very little, and I'm not proud to say this, very little patience for passive aggressive communication. And I think at times all of us are passive aggressive,
Mhm.
all of us. So I'm super focused on working on that because I know that it comes from a place of, as you said, anxious attachment or insecurity. What I don't want us to do is just say, well, that's my past and that's the way I am.
Mhm.
That makes us powerless.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting though, because I've noticed that about you. If you sense something, you name it. I remember one time I gave you an answer and I think it was in my tone and you called me right back. I can hear in your voice, you're not happy with that, even though you didn't say that. And I'd like to talk about it. I was like, damn, I thought I was going to get away with that. So what I want to point to is that although you have very little tolerance for passive aggressive, the flip side and positive side is that it has you be more direct.
Yes. And sometimes it's just, it's uncomfortable. And I'm not always that way. I care about you and care about our relationship enough to have done that, even though it was uncomfortable. I remember that actually.
Yeah. Well, so I guess my point there was just, there are positive and negatives to these things. I always say our trauma or the thing that traumatizes us will also be our greatest superpower. Out of that will come our greatest superpower. That I really do believe that the things that horrified me, traumatized me, really are what made me who I am today. So there are positives and negatives to all of this. I do want to go back to how do we change this and what do we do with this? Because there is something, and I believe Marissa Franco talks about it in the book. When someone gives you a compliment, let's say you're anxiously attached or even avoidantly attached, and somebody gives you a compliment, oftentimes we wave it away. Oh, thanks, but it was just, whatever. Right. And so it's almost as if it was never said, according to our nervous system. One of the ways that we can work with this and shift and change our even internal experience of how these things happen is when we are experiencing anything that's in the realm of secure attachment. Somebody really does genuinely want to be with us. They're giving us direct communication because they love us, not because they're trying to make us wrong. In the case that I just said with you and I, is to stop, to acknowledge that, mostly internally, feel it, because I think that shifts our atoms. I think that shifts our experience in the world. Let it flow through our body. Mm-hmm. As uncomfortable as it is, that creates new neural pathways. And that can shift our experience from, they don't really like me, you were just saying that, to actually, wow, this is what it's like to be loved and to be comfortable and to feel calm and at ease, that I'm okay in the world and the world is not a scary place.
Beautiful. It makes me wonder, as we try to shift our responses, especially as it relates to communication, and this is just such a great guideline. I keep looking down because I'm looking at everything I wrote down when you were talking. Do you think, because you haven't shared, and if you're willing to, I would appreciate it and love it. You haven't really shared how it is that you believe you have become to have an anxious attachment style at times. And is it important to figure that out? Like, do we need to know why we are the way we are, or can we still just work on it without opening up that can of pain?
For me, it is important to know why. Mm-hmm. It's a balance for me to not stay there and dwell on it, and, all of that. I've spent years in therapy, self-development junkie and all of that, for me, I can't say specifically why I have an anxious attachment, but I just know my upbringing was rocky. I have 2 alcoholic parents, and, there was abuse in the house and it was chaos and nobody was really present. There were people there, which is, for me, one of the worst feelings is being in a room with a bunch of people and feeling that feeling of loneliness. Because as a kid, all we need is somebody to know that we matter in the world and to have somebody see us, and so I think, for me, I can tell it feels awful to be in a secure attached place. I often want to jump. I want to go. I want to run. I want, maybe that's part of the avoid. I'm just like too uncomfortable. Ask Tom. I'm like, I'm out. This is too comfortable. I don't like it,
Mhm.
And so it takes time and effort to like, okay, what do I really want? And how do I change that? So I don't know if that answers your question. It's,
It does. And it also makes me want to point out that, damn, girl, you're doing it, because I remember being in a meeting setting with you, and then you shared that you felt unseen and and not valuable in that meeting setting. And you could have left it at that, but you went on to tell me why that was. And it meant, and because you shared why, like when I was growing up, so many times I felt like I was just dispensable and not seen. And I've never forgotten it. And I think it's another really piece of how we can enrich friendships, is to understand people's journey. I mean, and so as I'm asking the question, I am seeing, and I see we have some questions too. I can't wait to get to those. But as I think about my question, do we need to understand how it is that we've developed these attachment styles? I think we've answered it just through this conversation. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and, honestly, Tara, in our friendship is one of the places I'm like, oh, okay, this is, direct communication. It's more of a secure attachment. And sometimes it's very uncomfortable, but you've helped me to see that. And one of the things I want to say about this, which is why we come on the Daily Huddle, it's why even today, we've talked about this. Like I'm challenging myself to be more vulnerable, because it sucks in a public setting. Being vulnerable for me sucks, period. I would love you to see the positive side, nothing else. That's all there is, But when we bring these things to light, they stop having the same power over us. This narrative,
say it one more time. Say that one more time.
When we bring these things to light, they stop having power over us. Now, see, Sorrel did a mic drop. You said that yesterday too. It is so true. The narrative in our head tells us, don't do that. You're going to look weak. You're going to sound stupid. You want to hear, if you knew the thoughts coming on here talking about, even as I'm talking, like, don't say that. They're going to think terrible of you. Whatever it is designed to keep it in the dark. The whole setup inside of me is designed to keep it in the dark for all the reasons. And then you bring it out and you go, oh my God, that wasn't so bad. I feel totally different. Wow. And so you got to check those narratives and those stories. Vulnerability is a superpower. Totally.
I know it builds safety. I mean, to know that someone's being forthright and honest. I mean, that's a relationship. So thank you.
I cherish mine with you. Okay, let's get to some questions. Let's see. Is that Cece?
Hey, I really don't have any questions. I actually have a comment. I want to thank you guys for you ladies for the dialogue, and I could identify when you shared about you grew up in a house that had alcoholism, and you felt or experienced being invisible. I did too, and I did use a lot of self-help groups and all that, and I would run from any type of relational issue, like if I experienced fear, instead of me having courage to talk about it and say, hey, I'm experiencing this, and then move forward, I ran and I would flee every situation, jump out of situations. And that has changed because I no longer have that attachment. I have humbled myself and become very vulnerable. That means I'm facing all of my fears. I'm running to it. And one way how I started was doing comedy. So I get up and talk about me, myself, and I, them three people, nobody else. And being vulnerable, people can see the real you when I face my fears, which is one of them was the fear of public speaking. Something shifted inside of me. The light became brighter, And that narrative in my mind, it goes on occasionally, but I bypass it. That means I redirect that thought to something better. And I can see myself being very prosperous and vulnerable, and not being afraid to be a vulnerable and talk about those things that I always kept secret. So thank you guys. Thank you, ladies, for the dialogue, and thank you for letting me share. I pass.
Thank you, Cece. Cece's talking about getting out of her comfort zone too, which is so important. You talk about that a lot. Tom, what you got for us today?
Well, thank you. Good morning. I think
And
this.
first, Tom, I have to stop you. Don't talk about how I push away and avoid an attachment. Don't do
I was going to put that.
Talk about it.
I was going to put that in the chat. I just need a little more time.
I'm sorry, you're muted. I can't hear you.
Go on, Tom, be vulnerable.
Oh, thank you. So I think what Cece just said, I want to go a little further. Kathryn, a few minutes ago, you mentioned the word technique. I think it's like a habit for when you're experiencing secure attachment to shift the question when you're feeling anxious attachment. How do you think about, habits that you would like to, implement, for the awareness and then the steps to then pull you off of that?
Oh, that's a great question. Lots of answers. I'm going to tell you the first one that came to mind. There's a great book written about, it's called Atomic Habits, I believe. James Clear.
Yep.
Yep. And he talks about habit stacking. And that if there's something that you do regularly, attach something that you want to do like anew. So in other words, if you drink tea every morning or coffee every morning, attach something to that habit that's already there that you'd like to do. So in other words, if I'm drinking my coffee, I might start to think, I might spend a few minutes reflecting on some experiences I've had with other people. And what did that feel like? Oh, I bet I was in anxious attachment there. For me, I would feel that in my body. Either way, we can't ignore the experiences we've had. And so I'd feel that in my body and say, okay, how would I like to do that different? If it were a secure attachment, I would just try and feel that. That may be more difficult for me. Go, wow, that was really nice to know that there's nothing else there. There's no passive aggressive. It's just direct connection. So that's one way. And the second way, Tom, again, is to pay attention to your body, to pay attention to your experience. So when, to consistently look, when you're in conversation with somebody, how am I feeling right now? Could just be a light touch like, okay. And then, because that awareness is the first step. There's lots to do beyond that, but to just, I would say, start with awareness. Wow, I feel really triggered right now. I wonder where that came from. That awareness can stop me from doing like what Tara described and doing that knee-jerk reaction and sending that email. I know if I start like this, having to send that email, because I have that too, Tara, I make myself stop. Meaning I've gotten triggered and I want to send the response right now. I know that's a bad idea. So that's a habit that I've created. No matter what it is, I have to wait.
Awesome advice.
Yeah. Tara, do you have anything to add to that?
The only thing really that that's popping up for me based on your question, Tom, is when we think about anxious or avoidant reactions, if we're reacting in one of those two ways, so let's say we're reacting in an anxious way, we're going to end up pushing someone away. We're not going to get what we want. And if we react in an avoidant way, then we're going to cause someone to try to cling harder. Both of those things are not what we want. And I think remembering that for me might help me to stop and ask myself how I want to communicate and what is the most secure, loving way that I can do that.
I love that, Tara. Focusing on the end outcome, because what we think in that moment, I definitely want to send this email. It's not going to get me what I ultimately want and often creates more that I have to clean up.
Yeah.
I love that. Y'all, this has been great.
Good, thank you.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Tom, for asking. This has been great. And there we are. It's just like a blip and it's over. I've loved spending the time with you this morning. Thank you, Tara, for all you bring to our relationship and this daily huddle. We're going to close out with our 7 tenets from Patty Dabrowski. And I have to bring them up because I only ever say 6 and I skip a different one every time. So
I got you.
yeah, that's right. You got it. So laugh out loud, find a way to laugh, watch something funny, watch baby or kid videos on YouTube. I swear you will be rolling on the floor. They are so funny. Share your love with others in whatever way. Think about how you want them to feel. Maya Angelou says people will not remember what you do. They will remember how you made them feel. Eat mostly plant-based. Stress less by getting those 7 hours of sleep. Give of your vulnerability, of your time, your love, whatever your resources are, whatever someone needs. And I never forget this one. Move that body. Move what your mama gave you. Andrea, we're so glad to have you back. We've missed you. So good to see all of you. Thank you, everybody. See you tomorrow on Thursday's Daily Huddle.
One
All
love,
right.
guys. One love.
Thank you,
All right. Thank
Kathryn.
you.
Bye.